right. Hello, everybody. My name is Angela Sabo, and this is my project on the dynamic world of modern English linguistics. I'm an English creative writing major, which pretty much means if there's anything I love to talk about, it's reading and writing. I'm a huge technology supporter, but I understand both the positive and negative effects that it has in our lives. So, in this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the way we communicate via texting and social media, how that has changed English linguistics thus far, and I also included some points at the end about some adverse effects of social media because I think it's important to address. All right, so let's start with some cold, hard facts. All right, I wanted to start by listing some awesome foundation statistics that I found from the Pew Research Center. So, this website is actually really awesome. If you want to check it out, I put the name right up here. So, as you can see, I wrote down facts for adults and then also for kids. So, David Crystal gave a really interesting talk on the theory of texting language, and he kind of addressed how most people texting are actually adults. So, why are we always giving adolescents a bad rap? And in addition to that, if kids are the ones texting, then they are still practicing reading and writing. He presents data that shows that kids who text regularly actually have higher literacy scores and kids who get cell phones younger actually have higher scores younger as well. So, I can't say that correlation, causation kind of thing is exactly linear because I'm sure that it has to do a lot with, race, gender, family income, living area, things like that. But statistics do show, those things align. So these are the facts we're working with right here. So as you can see, 95% of adults have a cell phone and 77% own a smartphone. So that is pretty tight across the board, 69, 70 to 95. That's a lot of people, right? So we're really looking at big numbers here. So, I asked my best friends to help me kind of with a G-rated conversation that would mimic the way we text each other every day, but just exemplify it a little bit more for this screenshot. I highlighted over on the right-hand side all of the significant language that we used, and in my opinion, one of the interesting criticisms of the digital age language is that we are dumbing down the way we speak to each other. And my opposition to that would be, well, let's take it back in time and look at Shakespeare. So, he is the most obvious and most famous word inventor in the history of the English language, if not any language ever. And generation after generation, we've been inventing and using our own colloquialisms while changing the colloquialisms of other generations. So, as you can see, there are some abbreviations here and then just some, different words. Okay, so then on this page, I just sort of made some little graphics of the link between meaning of a word and then the new word assignment of my generation. So as you can see over here on the left, These sort of look like abbreviation type words, but I do want to emphasize that while these might seem like abbreviations or like shortened versions, the versions of the words that we would use in conversation are completely different. So the way you would use sus in a sentence, you wouldn't necessarily use the word suspect. It just wouldn't have the same effect. And then over here, these words, so angry and triggered, are related. So triggered definitely has a little bit more connotation, where some people use this word to, as warning. You hear trigger warning, triggered, um, when talking about things like mental health. I see a lot of trigger warnings when people post about substance abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, things like that, just so it's kind of like an acknowledgement of, if these things bother you, maybe tune into this post, in a different way at a different time, kind of thing. So now this is probably one of the more interesting parts of this project. So I just sort of looked at different platforms that we use for communication. So one of the really interesting differences for me was the dialect of email versus text, right? So the diction, everything's different. It's completely different. So my 10-year-old cousin, she has a smartphone, she has an iPad, and she really relies on these things. So they don't have computers. The school gives out iPads, which is a new thing in our school district. So she's able to do everything online. She's able to communicate with everyone through the platform of her school page, whatever, Blackboard, whatever it is that they use. So it eliminated the need for her to send an email. So I feel like email is really one of those things that my generation was on the cusp of. So not only were we really the last generation to work with email, AOL, but we were also the first generation to be texting. So we have both ends, right? And this was really interesting to me because the way I communicate with my professors via email is obviously a polar opposite of the way I will send my mom a text, at the mall, right? So it's just completely different forms of communication. In the case of email, you're kind of anticipating that the person will get back to you in a day or a couple days. So you're trying to send as much information as possible. Where in a text, it's a little bit easier. You can send, hey, what's up, a little less, time constraining, right? So then we go right into, with that, the kind of social media etiquette that comes along with all those things. So David Crystal talked a lot about new technologies and the effect that each technology brings to language. So, everything started kind of with the invention of the printing press, because now people were reading more. Information was reaching people faster. When the telephone was invented, people automatically thought it would be the downfall of everything. People were panicked. No one thought they would ever have to leave their houses again. Everyone was nervous. Obviously, that didn't happen. We're social creatures. It's just, at this point, it's ignorant to think that advances in technology are going to prevent us from socializing at all. The socialization patterns changes, but we are always going to keep socializing, right? So there's just new forms, new norms the way there would be anyways. So here I asked my friends to mimic a conversation that would happen between a couple roommates. So as you can see, there's punctuation, the messages are longer. I am using whole sentences, and so is the person responding to me. So there's a clear difference between sending a text to a close family member or your best friend or your boyfriend and, significant other, and then sending a message to a group of people where you're trying to, come across a certain way. So there's definitely a kind of silent norm that is, um, you want to communicate just the right amount, right? So you want to put a smiley face, but maybe not an emoji, an exclamation point instead of a period to show that you're not being, rude, I guess, is what this generation has sort of integrated. But we all seem to kind of have mutual understanding of these things, which is really very interesting. And if I had more time, I would absolutely dive into that. So I do think it's important to address the um, effects, and for people that are watching this and going to respond, I would love to know your opinions, thoughts, how you feel negatively or positively impacted by social media, whether it's in a linguistic way, whether you feel, disenfranchised from the, book, text, library era of our parents, or if this has been, positive for you, or if you really don't think about it that much. I also want to address the social problems with, and physical problems with social media and the idea of living in an era where people have careers just by posting pictures of themselves, of their bodies online. So, with 92% of adolescents checking in online at least once a day, according to Dr. Gallivan, in regards to his work with teen social media and body image, over 50% of 13-year-old girls are dissatisfied with their bodies, dieting, fasting, vomiting, or using laxatives. To me, this percentage seemed actually really low. 50% seems surprisingly low. I'm sure that it's not accurate. There's no way. As a woman and a former teenage girl growing up in the age when social media was just coming into its own, myself and every single other woman I've ever known has struggled with body image. And I can only imagine what it's like to grow up now in this era. So there's definitely, negative side effects, but I think, that the English language is going to continue to change, and that's something that we should really look at with an open mind and see the positives, the diversity in language, and a common ground amongst generations.